The four cycles of Irish mythology. Irish mythology is grouped into four distinct cycles. They are the Ulster Cycle, the Fenian Cycle, the Mythological Cycle, and the Historical Cycle. Number 1. The Ulster Cycle. The Ulster Cycle recounts the 1st century BC tales of King Cunifer, Cuchulainn, and the mighty men and women of the northern province of Ullal, which is today known as Ulster. While there are many loose stories, often depicting a single tale, one unifying saga stands out among the best of all Irish epics, and it is known as the Táin Bó Cúailnge, or the Cattle Raid of Cooley. The Fenian Cycle tells the stories of Fionn McCool and his band of noble poet warriors known as the Fianna, from the Irish word Fien meaning a warrior, who protected Ireland and fought with honour as a virtue. The stories are set around the 3rd century AD, and historically we know such bands of warriors existed in Ireland from at least the 6th century. While Christian elements can be found throughout the text, the stories point to an earlier pre-Christian mindset where the hero is placed high in the altar of the mind as something to aspire to and someone to learn from. It's told somewhat as a dialogue between St. Patrick and Uiscin, Fionn's son, in a story titled A Galamh na Dá Seanarach, or the Colloquy of the Old Men. It is in these accounts that we learn of Uiscin's visit to Tir na Nog, the land of the ever-young, the powerful love between Dermot and Grania, and the salmon of knowledge. Number 3. The Mythological Cycle. The Mythological Cycle is the most elusive and imaginative cycle of Irish mythology, since the tales are of the greatest antiquity and describe the most outlandish beings and events. It is in this cycle that we learn about the gods and titans of Irish myth, the illustrious Tuatha De Danann and the monstrous Fomorians. This cycle is rife with magic and mystical characters who make appearances throughout the other cycles. It is from here that we find the origins of Ireland's famous fairy people. And material from this cycle is also drawn from a manuscript called the Metrical Dinshenchus, which gives the myths about the origins and lore of Irish place names. Number 4. The Historical Cycle. The Historical Cycle reflects a remarkably Irish trait, which is their keen interest in preserving genealogies and historical accounts in writing. In addition to our mythological stories and legal manuscripts, there are also a body of manuscripts referred to as annals. These sought to preserve a somewhat accurate account of historical events. Such important matters were protected by a class of individuals known in Ireland as fili, which were poet historians. However, in the Historical Cycle, we see obvious mixing of factual accounts with fictitious embellishments, which places this literature in the realm of mythology. This cycle can be further grouped into smaller cycles within it under the names of the kings who make appearances, the earliest being a 3rd century king of Leinster named Lavraid Lungshi, but also includes accounts about the legendary kings Cormac MacArt and Conn of the 100 Battles. This classification into mythological cycles is a relatively recent literary invention, but luckily for us approaching the topic today, it is a classification that makes sense and provides us with a good starting point or a skeleton to begin our understanding of Irish mythology. In the earlier traditions, these stories were grouped together by type, not by character or era, so we have the tales of invasions, the tales of the destructions, the voyages, the tales of the courtships and cave stories, the tragedies, the banquets, the elopements, the plunderings, the sieges, the cattle raids, and the adventures.